This is the Nebraska Broadcasters Association History Project, where we interview and talk about the people that have made Nebraska broadcast history over the past years and decades. Today, no different, as we talk to a real legend in Nebraska and Omaha broadcasting, going back to the 1960s, most notably at WOWT Channel 6. We welcome the illustrious Dave Weber. Hi, Dave.
Hello, everybody. I mean, you. Hello.
And me. You've been here a long time, Dave Weber, and keep getting better.
I've seen it all, and I came back.
And you remember most of it.
Most of it? Yeah. Yes, I do.
You actually started out, your first experience in Omaha was in the United States Air Force when you were stationed at Offutt Air Force Base.
Got sent to...
Was that your experience of becoming a part of this community?
Yes. I was overseas, and we got shipped back. My route rotated back, and I went to Offutt and stayed out there 2 years. And while I was overseas, I played guitar and sang a little bit folk music because it was big in the early 60s. Mm-hmm. And then when I came here, I did the same thing, sang and worked out at the base in security, and then sang at some bars in town, and just had a great time.
Got some recognition as well back in those days, didn't you?
Not promoted. Recognition, yes. Promotion, no. No.
After you left, it was 1966 when you left Offutt, you moved to Chicago.
I had to. I had to go home and see my mom and dad in Evanston, where I was born. And Mom called me and told me my Uncle Al, who owns a big hardware store in Chicago, one of his salesmen passed away. Could I come home and help him out a little bit? So I did, and I worked there about 3 or 4 months, just back-breaking work after doing nothing.
But then came Columbia School of Broadcasting. So obviously you had an idea of what direction you wanted to head in.
I knew that they had a program for recent guys getting out of the service to pay for an education. So Columbia School of Broadcasting up in Minneapolis, I was going to go there, and the government was going to pay for it. So I said, well, what the heck? I always wanted to be in radio and television. Maybe I could just break into radio doing that, learn at least what I'm supposed to sound like. But it didn't work out.
You came out of Columbia School of Broadcasting, you didn't have a job.
No, I didn't go.
Oh.
I had a girlfriend back here in Omaha who called me one night and said, you know, KBON is looking for an all-nighter. You want to get a job? Come on back to Omaha. So I called Columbia School of Broadcasting, and I said, I'm skipping this.
Can I get my money back?
No, I didn't pay him anything. I said, I already got a job in radio, so thanks. Thanks, but no thanks.
KBON.
Yeah.
Where on the dial? Which station was that?
Oh, God.
1420?
1180.
1180?
Yeah.
Okay. And who was the general manager there at the time?
Oh, God.
Was that where you first came in contact with Cal Kirshen?
Nope. Bryce Brazel was our news director.
Okay.
Cal was over at KFAB. I didn't meet Cal until later on when I was on the air in KBON and still singing.
Nights and weekends? Alone?
Nights and weekends.
Solos or as a group?
I had a girl named Colleen Fitzsimmons. Dave and Colleen was our acting.
Dave and Colleen.
We played all over Omaha, all the folk clubs, and Sandy Jackson had 2 or 3 clubs. We played his clubs.
So you were kind of locally famous.
Yeah, you could say that.
Then came KFAB?
Yeah. I needed a real job. Well, I quit KBON and started singing full time because I was making more money singing, if you can believe that, than I was making at KBON.
I can believe it.
So, but then I fell in love and wanted to get married, so I needed a real job. Singing in bars was not going to hack it.
No.
So Kirshen said they need somebody at KFAB Radio, the afternoon shift, if you want to come over and try.
Spin records?
See if Lyle likes you, yeah. Do the news, do the weather, spin records. It was fun.
Must have worked.
It was. It was a good time. My voice cracked one time on the air. Leave it on KFAB Radio. And Bremser, I saw his face in the little porthole on the door.
Of course, Lyle heard it. He heard everything.
And he opened the door and he says, "We're not running a school for broadcasters here, Weber." And that scared me to death, and I tried, never cracked again, I don't think.
Then you went to television, Sioux City.
Yes, a guy named Harry Bloom worked with me at KFAB. He was another, just a guy that worked there in the news department. And Terry's grandparents lived up in Morningside in Sioux City.
Terry's your wife.
And so I said, let's go up and see your grandparents, play some golf. So we did, and I called Harry, because I knew he was up in Sioux City at Channel 14.
KMEG?
Yep. And I said, Harry, let's go to lunch. Okay, I'm working the noon news tomorrow. I'll meet you at 12:30 at the station. Okay. So I get there about 12:15, and I'm sitting at his desk in the newsroom. They didn't have all the security we have now. And John Poston was the news director, and he's sitting there just puffing away watching the news. And the show's over, and the sports guy comes in and says, "That's it. I'm done." Walks out of the studio, walks out of the station, and Poston sits there and, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm waiting for Harry to go to lunch." "Oh. Dave Weber, I've heard you on KFAB radio." "Yes, sir. You got a nice voice. You ever been on television?"
You are now.
I said, "No," but he says, "Let's sit down. Here's the guy's script that he just threw on his desk," hands it to me, and he says, "Read the stories here. See what you look like. See what you sound like." And he offered me the job.
How long were you there?
3 good years. I did a kids cartoon show in the afternoon.
You were the guy with the clown makeup?
I was an old man. I had to gray my hair then. Oh my God. And we did Laurel and Hardy movies and Our Gang movies. Mm-hmm. And
what name did you use?
Pops Bijou Theater. I was the custodian of the old theater.
So you'd pretty much done it all. Before we get off of KFAB, where you're doing afternoons and playing the records and doing the news and the weather, now that the statute of limitations has expired, can you kind of retell the story we told out here in the hall about your time at KFAB and some of the things that went on there?
Oh, you mean the scoreboards?
Yes.
Yeah, I was on the air on Saturday during the football games, and they would kick it back to me, and I would do scores at halftime for Lyle, and I'd start reading the scores, and I did it once or twice, and then somebody came up to me. I can't remember who it was. Who could it have been? Tom Johnson? Could have been.
Could have been TJ.
He was program director, and he said, "Dave, just read the scores on the Budweiser sheet from the top to the bottom."
Why would that be important, Dave?
Well, because then the people who cared about the scores could just go down on their sheet and see what they had.
So you were playing to the bookies. Gamblers.
I didn't know it. I didn't know.
Of course you were innocent.
I was innocent.
Yeah. But it worked.
Yes, it did. Mm-hmm. And one time I was in the bathroom, and the guy that they were going to have on the halftime show didn't show up. And so Bremser kicked it to me 5 minutes early, and I'm in the bathroom, and now let's go back to the station and Dave Weber with the scores. Dave? Silence. And about 10 seconds goes by, and I'm getting dressed and running, and I run out and slide around the corner, and Jack Payne says, "Don't worry, Dave, he's not going to fire you." And I run in, and here are the scores, halftime scores from today's college football.
You were there with the greats at KFAB during those days.
That was Ken Hedrick, Jack Payne, everybody.
Tom Johnson.
Yeah, TJ.
They were great.
Just great people.
You did spend a period of time at KMTV Channel 3, where it says here you were the assistant to Jim Kelter.
Cal Kirshen got me that job. He said, "Come back from Sioux City. I'll get you a job at, there's a job opening at KMTV. And he says, be Dave Blackwell. No, Jim Kelter is now the sports guy. So his assistant sportscaster. And I said, "Oh, Cal, I can't thank you enough." So I got back to Omaha, bought a house, but it just didn't work out.
Must have paid a lot, too.
No.
And Kelter is still around doing sports here and
good
there
old Jimmy.
Around the metro. All right, then you come over to WOWT. At the time, was it WOWT or was it just WOW television?
I think my red nylon jacket had WOW TV.
Yeah.
And that was 46 years ago, 45
Probably
years ago when I
before
started.
the whole thing
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah.
And you came over here as John Nicely's assistant. You've been
Always-
a lot of assistants.
Always somebody's assistant. Never good enough to be the number one guy.
Of course, Nicely was doing sports then before you.
Yes, he was. And he went to St. Louis, and they promoted me to his job.
And then he came back in the news division.
Yes, and we came back to Channel 7
Right.
to do sports. Isn't that right? Yeah.
I think you're right.
Did sports, and then he came back to 6 and did news. He was a news anchor.
Still is after all these years.
After all these years.
You've seen a lot of everything that's gone on. Most notably, one of the things that you were an integral part of every year was the College World Series at the old Rosenblatt Stadium.
My favorite summertime place. Gosh, that was so much fun. We'd sit on the roof with our feet hanging over above the foul ball net and shoot film and shoot the game and then take the film back, soup it, develop it, and drive out to the airport and put it on a plane to whatever school was playing in that game. And I thought that was so cool. We got $25 for doing that.
That was big money back then,
Back
Dave.
then.
But you met a lot of people.
Oh,
ball
met
players,
everybody.
managers, coaches. Some of your best memories are from those years.
Yeah, they would be if I remembered anything about them.
Major league players that went through the College World
Oh.
Series.
Every one of them that came through the CWS to get to the pros, yeah, I ran into every one of them. But the most memories I had of former players when Bob Gibson had his celebrity golf tournaments. He'd bring in Hall of Famers from every sport, and I'd get to introduce them at the banquet and just talk to them and have a great time. So much fun. I got a bag of autographed baseballs like this, and every one of them, I've got a story on how I got the autograph and where we were and how I met him and all that stuff.
Are they displayed anywhere?
They're in little plastic boxes, but not displayed.
Okay.
No. I stopped doing that when I came into work one day and a couple of the photographers had my Mickey Mantle autographed ball and they were playing catch out in the parking lot with it. Oh, that is Mickey Mantle on there. I'm sorry, Dave.
Yeah. What is after all these years of Rosenblatt, the stadium downtown, the College World Series, the Husker football program, you've worked it all. What is your most memorable story? And I know that's like picking which of your children's your favorite.
No doubt about it. The '94 Husker game in Miami when they beat Miami, and I had found the corn cob in the end zone.
Tell that story because a lot of people today don't know that story.
Well,
It's a superstition.
we tried to get sideline passes for all of us, and we couldn't because they had too many guys on the sideline. Everybody from Miami was there on the sidelines,
Now, which stadium was this?
the old Orange Bowl.
The old Orange Bowl.
And so I tried to get a sideline, and we'd been there 5 or 6, 7 times at the Orange Bowl in years before. So I knew all the guys on the staff there, but they didn't have any badge to give me for the sideline. I had to go up in the press box. And who else was in the press box? All the overflow from the Miami season ticket holders had half the press box, and they were screaming and cheering every time Miami did a good play, and I was just going nuts. So I left and went down to the restaurant down below and sat in the kitchen and watched it on a little TV screen with the help in the kitchen. And then we went down, we were down, I don't know what it was, 17-3 maybe? I can't remember. We were down 2 touchdowns, and I finally got so angry I walked out on the field and I went up to one of my buddies and I said, I got to get on the sideline. I can't handle this. I'm going nuts. He says, all right, here. Gives me a sideline pass. And I go over and I stand right on the corner of the end zone with the Husker side. And I stand there and I'm watching the game, and we don't play much better in the second half. And so I said, oh, man. And all of a sudden, some voice behind me from the stands says, Dave Weber. And I look up and I can't see anything but Huskers, thousands of Husker fans on that little corner of the end zone. And I said, oh, Dave Weber, look again. You have to will this team to victory. And he just yelled it. And everybody looked at me. And he says,
Sure,
you're
it's on your shoulders
you're the
now.
only one who can do it.
That's right.
Will the team to victory. And I said, wherever he was up there, I said, "You got it." And I looked in the end zone, and there was a bunch of corn cobs from the Miami fans had thrown them in the end zone. So I went over and I got one. It was only about that big. And I walked back to the corner, and I held it up like this. And I held it like this. And I put it behind my back, honest to God. And we score a touchdown. The old fullback dive, touchdown. And I look at the corn cob, and I look up, and all the fans are cheering the team. And I hold the corn cob up, and they cheer even louder. And I go, what is going on here? And then the voice says again, "Great job, Dave, keep it up." So I turned back around. I said, I'm not going to watch the game. I held the corn cob behind my back, and I closed my eyes, and I'd open them up every play. And if the fans would get up like this, and if it was a good play, they'd start screaming. If it was a bad play, they'd go back. So then we score another touchdown, and we take the lead. And I still didn't turn around. And we intercepted the ball at about the 50 at the end, and we won it. And I turned around, and they were carrying Osborne out on the field. And and this guy, all of a sudden, this guy's standing up among all these people, and so I still didn't know who it was. Well, and then we had NBC broadcast the game, and we were NBC, so we had a whole hour. They said, "If you want this hour on our satellite, you can have it, Dave." And I said, "Yes."
Yeah.
So we did a whole hour post-game show live from
Back to Omaha.
live from the Orange Bowl until they turned the lights out. And the only light that was on the little winky light that we had on the camera, and here comes Osborne up. And we got Devaney, we had everybody on the post-game.
Sure.
And then we came back, and I told the guys what happened. And then I saw the video that we recorded of it. And they were looking at each other like, I think Dave's a little, had been having a few beers or something. I said, "No, this is the truth, guys." And in fact, we made VHS tapes of our coverage, and after that, we made DVDs of it, the whole pregame show, the whole
Everybody
thing.
wanted a copy.
Everybody wanted a copy.
Where's that corn cob today?
It's in a little case in my living room.
It really is?
Yeah, it really is. And it's only about this big.
You are big for keeping memorabilia, aren't you?
And the guy that did it, the guy that
Yelled at you?
yes, I put it on the air. If that guy is anywhere nearby, and a guy from Mutual of Omaha called and said it was me. And so we had him on the air and talked to him about it. And it was just a great story.
And great memories.
Oh, just a wonderful memory. And then we took it down to Phoenix the next year for the game with Florida. And we beat the heck out of them, and I held it up again, and everybody was going nuts in the stands. Everybody knew the story by then.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was the best night ever in sportscasting for me.
Who's the most memorable personality in sports you've ever met, worked with, had a relationship with? Would it be Bob Gibson?
Oh, Gibby was, he was something else.
Mm-hmm.
He was so good an athlete in basketball, football, if he'd have played football, and baseball, of course, obviously. And he had a heck of a temper, but he had a real warm side too.
Mm-hmm. And he loved being around young kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was nasty to some of the adults, but he loved being around young kids.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would not have wanted to bat against him in baseball.
They still say that.
You could just throw it wherever he wanted to throw it at 100 miles an hour and have no conscience. Well, you know what baseball's like.
Sure. And in baseball, he still gets the recognition. Outside of baseball, maybe not so much.
Well, I think he's gone now, but I think he might have had a reputation as being a little standoffish and a little angry, but that's the way he played.
Right. That's who he was.
Yeah, that's who he was.
Yeah.
And but I got to be really good friends with him, and he was fun. Good guy.
The Husker coaching changes we've all seen over the past decades. You've been there on the sidelines, in the locker rooms. You knew all of these coaches personally. How's that been? How's that affected you? What's the impact been like?
I used to go to the pregame meal for the lunch down at the stadium,
This was with Devane he was running it.
Yeah, well, and then Osborne.
Right.
And all the assistant coaches would come up there and sit and have a sandwich or something, just sit around a table with all the press guys. And I just went up for the spring game, and I kept waiting for the assistant, like on my brains, Dave, that was 60 years ago. They're all gone, Dave, except George Darlington still was there. And then Frankie, when he was let go, I didn't understand. We were all in the sports office saying, well, he saved his job. I mean, he had a good season.
9-3.
And then, boom, we hear that he's been fired. It's horrible.
Now, did Tom Osborne have a lot to do with that, or was that Steve Peterson?
Oh, Steve. At least he's taken the blame all these years for it. I don't think Tom had anything to do with Frank being fired. And
then Frank came back just a couple of weeks ago from when we're recording this. And did you get a chance to visit with him?
I got him on my phone. I was on the sideline and I took some pictures. And then I'm standing there with the phone and he walked by and I said, Frankie, like I did at the 94 bowl game when he gave me a big hug. And he goes, Webbs, and he walks over and gives me another big hug. And I said, God, it's good to have you back. And I'm so much water under the bridge. It's really
Everyone
good.
said that was really a very special day for him.
I started crying. I started crying just like he was
But he
crying.
almost didn't go. They say he up till the very last minute, he wasn't sure that this was the right thing to do.
Oh, it was. It had to
But
be the right
it
thing.
absolutely was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't think he had any regrets at the end.
No, just to let him know that the fans still love him, and they always did love him. And it was just a horrible situation that nobody except 2 or 3 people had any control over.
Yeah.
Too bad.
And we went through some real coaching challenges after that. And we won't go through all of that. But one I do want to talk about, because you were there for all the years that he played when he was Nebraska's quarterback, and that's Scott Frost. You knew him as a player, as a kid on campus. And then he came back as the hometown hero, coming back to save the program. Those were tough years for you because you knew all the people, weren't they?
It was difficult because I knew Scott when he played, and when he played in high school. And I knew the whole story, what happened with him, and went to Stanford, and everybody thought he was going to come to Nebraska and be the next quarterback after Tommy. And it didn't work out that way. He went to Stanford and came back, and I was glad to see him come back because he had a lot of talent, and as it turned out, he really played well for Nebraska.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, talent doesn't always make a good coach. And I think Scott had some problems. He certainly was in the right spot at Central Florida when he won.
Yeah, that worked for him.
Yeah, that worked for him great. But it did not translate to Nebraska and the Big Ten at all.
Dave, when we look at the business today, we pull back and look at a broad view. The big story now is we're seeing serious cuts in newsrooms, sportscast coverage, local staff being cut out of stations. Is that going to be a problem going forward in terms of the local content? We're not seeing so much of that in Omaha, although Channel 42 has just cut their entire local news.
Entire local news.
And Sinclair has done that across the country.
When I started, when I came to 6 and got into the little groove or whatever you call it and felt real comfortable on the air, it was my little wacky sense of humor and the fun I had covering the sports and doing what I did and all the other stuff that I did. I mean, sportscasting was the important thing, but my day was full the whole day doing crazy stuff.
Speaking of crazy stuff, I mean, I worked for years with a very crazy guy who worked very closely with you, and the two of you together were unstoppable, and that's Greg Wagner.
Oh, Wags. See, now that's a perfect example. Wags came on Thursday. Merlin and I were here, and Ross was here. And Ross was out doing a story, and Merlin and I were here for Greg. And we would write the intro to the outdoors. And we would let Greg see it when he got here. And then we'd take it away and put a new intro in and not tell him. And then we had some crazy stuff that we described him with, and he'd start laughing out on the set live.
Couldn't control
And he
it.
couldn't control it. And it was just so much fun. And then the stuff we talked about was important. It was fishing, it was hunting, it was parks, it was all kinds of stuff that was important to people in Nebraska. But I think that aspect of the sport, of the game, is gone. The sportscasting part.
Yeah.
I just think it's gone. It's just sad.
You always had a partner in a lot of the years that you were here at Channel 6 with John Chapman.
Oh, Chaps.
You and Chaps were kind of an iconic duo around Channel 6 and in the community.
He went to Morningside. He was up there when I was doing the sports up there.
In Sioux City.
Yeah. And I didn't know that. And we got this Sunday morning sports talk show. Well, you know as much about it as I do.
That was on 1290 at the time.
And we'd review the Husker game, and then we'd review the other games and talk about, and then all of a sudden it would switch over to, oh, where's the best spaghetti in town, or who's got the nicest steak? And people started bringing food down to the radio station on Sunday morning for us to eat and try.
On the sidewalk.
Yeah, and mention them on the air. And it was such a great, grand time.
It was a fun show to do.
Oh, God, it was
And you and Chaps were so great to work with.
Oh, it was so much fun.
We've got young people coming up in this business all the time. We've got a great broadcasting program at UNO and a lot of kids coming out of that also at UNL. You got any advice that you can give to some of these young broadcasters coming up of what they should do, how they keep their feet on the ground, and what they should look toward as a career?
Boy, that's tough. I used to tell kids 30 years ago, broadcasting's fun, but it's a lot of luck. If Cal Kirshen hadn't been here, I wouldn't have had any of those jobs, I'm sure. He helped me get my jobs in radio and in television. You need help. You can be as talented as anybody on earth, and if nobody ever sees you, you're not going to get hired. Or if you don't have somebody that says, hey, you ought to take a look at this kid, he's really good, you probably won't get hired.
A lot of right time, right place.
Right time, right place is so important, but also talent, hard work, knowledge, dedication. If you do all those things, then you can have fun on the air and still get the job done.
And be responsible. After all these years, you're now doing Omaha every day. What's that all about? How much do you like that?
It's an interesting, we do it on Wednesday morning, 9, 9:15, 9:45, and 10 o'clock. If we have 4 shows, we do them in an hour. And it's as live 2 minutes, solid 2 minutes. If we goof something up, we got to start all over again. And it's fun because it kind of it's kind of a marriage between sales and news. And I often thought that was a marriage that should be there. They're both working towards the same thing, viewership. And the more viewership you have, the more money you can charge for commercials, and the more fun you have on the air. And I hate to say that word, but it's true.
This is not the most difficult business in the world to work in. No. It's supposed to be fun.
It's sports especially.
Especially sports.
Not news. I wouldn't goof around in the news.
No.
Maybe the weather, but not the news. But sports is supposed to be a break from all that. And all of a sudden, in the last 20 years, big deal stories, it's not.
Multi-million-dollar players.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of fundraisers over the years for a lot of charities. Seems like whenever anybody needs a host, the first name they look at is Dave Weber.
Because he always
never
says
turn
yes.
them down.
He always says yes.
Yeah.
Why not? I like to say there's not a disease I haven't hosted a fundraiser for, or a religion that I haven't represented on the air. And I say, fine. That's
Sure.
If you make a living doing what I did, and you don't have time to offer yourself free to people who watch you and appreciate you, then what are you doing here? You know what I mean?
Well, that's some of the best experiences you have, is meeting your audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there was another station that had, I don't even know what they called them, the ratings. I know what the ratings are for the stations, but individuals maybe had a rating system.
Q scores?
Q scores. And all the stations, Channel 3, mostly Channel 3 because I had friends over there. Your Q scores are off the map, Dave. People just love you. And everybody that we said, do you know so-and-so? Do you know Dave Weber? Yes. Have you ever talked to him? Yes. He knows me.
Yeah.
And they said, that's so important.
But not everybody is able to do that.
No, not everybody. No.
And the good ones always do.
They do.
You've had a lot of honors, a lot of awards. You got a face on the barroom floor up at the Omaha Press
When
Club.
you come out of the bathroom, I'm the first face you see.
Never noticed it that way.
Well, next time you go down.
Yeah. Next time I visit the restroom, I'll be sure to take note of that. But you have had a lot of awards, a lot of honors, a lot of recognition. And that says a lot about somebody that's been in the community for so long.
I've done a lot of things out at the base for the Air Force in the 50 years I've been back on the air here. And every time I go out there, I run into old generals or guys that I served with.
Oh, generals.
Well, you know them. They're really old.
Yeah.
They were generals when I was out there. But they're all the good people, and it's so important to be yourself and to have a good, well-rounded personality and relax and enjoy the things you get to do for a job. That might be what I tell kids. Enjoy it. Enjoy every minute of it, because it's not going to last forever unless you're me.
You gave all of us a scare a few years back. You had heart surgery.
Well, it wasn't.
It was serious.
The surgery was okay. They were surprised I had a heart. That was the problem.
That was the part they
couldn't
didn't
find
believe.
it. They could not find it. Yeah, I did. Stop eating fries and cheeseburgers. Not good for you.
You've totally recovered?
No. Oh, recovered.
Recovered.
I'm still in recovery.
Yeah.
It's like
But you lost a lot of weight.
I did.
That's not the best way to do it.
I had to give away those beautiful clothes. I had all those beautiful cashmere jackets.
And Dave Weber, you've been married how long now?
53 years.
53 years to Terry.
To Terry Weber.
And
Terry Lynn.
Children, grandchildren?
Davey's my oldest. He's 50 now. Marcy's 46, 47. And Joey's 44, I think. And they all have family. Davey's doesn't have family, but Joey and Marcy do.
So you've seen it all.
Grandkids.
You've watched them all grow up, and now you can sit back and relax and kind of take it all in.
I kind of feel like George in It's a Wonderful Life.
George Bailey?
George Bailey. Because the guy says, don't you see, George, if you hadn't lived, you lived a wonderful life, George. Just appreciate it.
Looking back on all these people and all these things that wouldn't have happened without Dave Weber. Really?
Well, that's one way of looking at it.
It is.
It might have happened to somebody.
Maybe a little differently, but you're the one that made it happen the way it did.
I sure had a lot of fun.
Well, it's a pleasure having you here, talking to you, getting a little bit of your history and how it relates to broadcasting in Nebraska. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Neil.
Our thanks, too, to Jim McKernan at WOWT Channel 6 and all the people here that have made this possible. Jim Tim, the Executive Director of the Nebraska Broadcasters Association, and the Executive Director, what's the title? A laureate? Emeritus, Marty Riemenschneider. We appreciate all of their efforts to put all this together. Again, this is the Nebraska History Project, a service of the Nebraska Broadcasters Association.